I'll begin. I want to talk about food production as a case of the malfunctioning of the free market. As you know, the capitalism, it runs on the free market, and there's something wrong with it. And food production would be it's like a symptom of capitalism. And I would illustrate that with the following presentation. So these are the outline. I'll start with the economy and how it might go wrong, and then I'll talk about ecology and ethics and the politics of food. So the economy, capitalism, it runs on a free market, and it's very simple, right? The price setting is through supply and demand, and the money is the common currency. So we buy and sell with a common currency instead of just doing barter and trade. We buy things and sell things using that common currency, money. And in a free market, companies or even people would try to maximize the profit. So profit maximization, that's their goal. And they will have a larger gain through production that's for sale in the market. So that's a very simple fact. And because of the market, the advertisement would be a way to stimulate consumption. So it's like no one knows about your product and you want to sell, so you have to advertise. And when there are more demand, you can sell for the same price by supplying more, so by producing more. So that's a very simple free market mechanism. But how does it relate to the ecology? Because as with food, given the profit maximization motive, you can minimize the cost because there's a gain and there's cost, right? The net as the surplus is the gain and then the cost to calculate the cost. And to minimize the cost, you can do that through intensive farming. It's, I guess most people would know about that, which is simply to farm intensively, which is to rear animals in a very unfavorable and packed environment, and feeding them with food that's cheaper and that they will grow meat faster. So grain products as animal feed, that's very typical in intensive farming, such as cow. There's a difference between grain-fed cows and grass-fed cows. The grain-fed ones, because of intensive farming, you need more grains to feed them, and that increase in demand for grain products that also contribute to more water consumption and using up more land for farming, and also the processing is difficult. And what's even worse is that because of intensive farming, there are more meat produced, and it's actually more than we can consume. So there will be unused goods, and it will go to waste because it will expire. Well, even if you do frozen food, yeah, frozen food you can store them for a long time, but many fresh meat expired and it has to be thrown away. Sometimes the landfill, and some other maybe incinerated. So waste disposal is yet another environmental problem, and that's very bad because you produce more meat and it goes to waste, and so it's and not only does it consume the environment more, it also produces too much waste for the environment to handle. And in terms of ethics, it's a very simple fact that some animals, well, many in intensive farming, the animals suffer, and it's inhumane treatment. If you've seen some videos about how the chickens are fed, they're caged They never moved an inch for their whole life. They produce eggs and it's taken away from them. They're just there as a meat factory to produce eggs and then to be fed, and then they will be. It's just to grow meat. It is as if they are not animals. They're not living, and that kind of livelihood is unnatural. They're not supposed to live that way. They're not supposed to be caged. And I think that's actually torture. So that's bad for them. They inflict suffering on them, and that's unethical. And in terms of health issue for consumers like us, the meat, it's very low quality because of the forced rearing. And there's also a difference between grass-fed and grain-fed cows. And there are many other issues related to intensive farming. And because, for example, when cows eat grains instead of grass, because they naturally eat grass, but if we fed them grain, they will develop diseases that need antibiotics. So it's like you feed them with the most convenient and cost-effective food, and they develop something bad. So and then you treat the problem with antibiotics. So it's like it's the whole profit maximization way of thinking. And antibiotics is a foreign substance, and it will be introduced into the food chain and to us, which if were it not for intensive farming, those antibiotics would not have entered into our body. So ethically, it's bad, and politically, it's a marketing strategy. It's quite well researched in many areas about a high-fat diet, or at least a low-carb diet. Carbohydrates relate to diabetes, and there are much high carbohydrate diet misinformation. Well, through propaganda, it's controversial, but there are quite a few academics who begin to talk about how, like the cane and the sugar cane industry, because of how ludicrous it is, how much money it makes, they would lie about the harmful effect of high sugar content drinks, for example. And some might even say that sugary drinks is now a form of addiction. Not only does it increase your insulin resistance, which will develop diabetes. It's also once you got used to drinking sugary drinks, you can't quit. It's an addiction, and all these things are not talked much about. And the free market, it could simply be a marketing strategy that the information about a high-fat diet is not talked about. And in the end, there's so much meat and food produced, but there's still famine in the world because of the unfair distribution through non-cooperation. Because if the food, the meat that are thrown away, if they could be used for other third world country with people that are starving, then it honestly will solve the problem of famine. But we fail to cooperate. It's yet another, besides global warming and renewability, there's also the problem with food that seems to be an embarrassment for humanity, because we're producing so much food, but there are still people who are starving, right? So it doesn't make sense, but that's reality. And some countries or some humanitarian organization, they have food aid, they send food to people who are starving, but it's just a short-term solution. So so the free market, right? So here's a summary. We have the free market, and that goes on profit maximization, and to think only about money, how to make more money. We have intensive farming, and intensive farming, in the end, we produce too much meat, ending up as waste. And the way the animals are farmed are rare. There are many problems, how they live during the life, and also the problem with health, because, for example, of antibiotics. And in the end, it's all politics, because it involves too much money, and we're producing so much food. There's still people starving, and that's another problem that we have to solve. And of course, it relates to our general theme of global warming, because how we use the natural resources and how we delegate resources such as land and water, it all relates to the climate. And so it is. Thank you.